This episode contains mature themes and includes narration produced using AI voice technology. Listener discretion is advised. In 1957, tragedy struck the quiet town of Hexham, England, when sisters Joanna and Jacqueline Pollock were killed in a horrific car accident. Their parents were left hollowed by grief, their home silent with loss. But 1 year later, the unimaginable happened. Twin girls were born into the same family. As they grew, the children spoke of toys long buried, streets they had never walked, and lives they should not have known. Two sisters returned from the grave. Welcome to Three Theories, the podcast where we uncover the great mysteries of the world. I'm Elena Hart, your guide on this journey through the unknown. Each episode will examine unsolved cases, paranormal phenomena, and historical and natural mysteries, and explore three compelling theories to help you decide. What do you believe? The road was quiet on that Sunday morning in Hexham, a market town tucked away in Northumberland, England. It was May 5th, 1957, and the cool spring air carried the sounds of birdsong, mixed with the faint hum of a car approaching on the A695. On the roadside, two young sisters walked together, hand in hand. Joanna Pollock was 11 years old, full of confidence and energy, with the kind of maturity that made her protective of her younger sister. Jacqueline, just 6, clung to her hand. She was shy, reserved, and had a distinctive birthmark on her forehead that often made her easy to recognize. That morning they were heading to church with a friend, the Sunday routine they'd grown accustomed to. The sisters chatted as children do, their shoes scuffing against the pavement. But that walk would be their last. From behind, a woman driving a car lost control. In one sudden, devastating moment, the vehicle swerved onto the sidewalk and struck the children. The impact was fatal. Joanna and Jacqueline Pollock were killed instantly. The Pollock family's world collapsed. Florence and John Pollock, the girls' parents, were consumed with grief. Losing one child was unbearable. Losing two on the same day, in the same accident, was beyond comprehension. Their small home became a place of silence, echoing with absence. Their toys sat untouched. Their beds remained neatly made. The laughter and life that had filled their walls were gone. For months, the Pollocks lived inside that grief. But then something happened that neither of them could have predicted. A year later, Florence became pregnant again. John, a man of strong faith, convinced himself this pregnancy was different. He told his wife with a kind of conviction that unnerved her. These children would not be new. They would be Joanna and Jacqueline, returned to them, reincarnated. Florence resisted the thought. It felt blasphemous, even dangerous to imagine such a thing. But John held firm. On October 4th, 1958, Florence gave birth to twin girls, Jennifer and Jillian. From the beginning, John's belief seemed to gain traction. Jennifer, like Jacqueline, bore a birthmark on her forehead, eerily similar to her late sister's. She also had a matching mark on her waist, just as Jacqueline had. Jillian, the older twin by 10 minutes, showed traits that reminded John of Joanna: confidence, leadership, maturity beyond her years. At first, Florence dismissed these as coincidences, but as the girls grew, stranger patterns emerged. By the age of 3, the twins began asking for toys that had once belonged to Joanna and Jacqueline. They recognized dolls and named them correctly, though the toys had been boxed away long before they were born. They pointed to specific landmarks in Hexham and identified them as places they used to go, though they had never been there before. One day, Florence overheard them talking about the accident, the car, the impact, with unsettling detail for children so young. Even more disturbing was their behavior in public. Walking down the same street where Joanna and Jacqueline had died, Jennifer and Jillian would clutch each other's hands, trembling, and insist a car was coming for them. Their fear was visceral, born not from stories told by adults, but from something they seemed to carry within them. The family could not deny what they witnessed. And as word spread, the Pollock twins became the subject of fascination. Journalists and paranormal researchers alike began to circle the case, asking the same questions. Were these girls truly the reincarnation of Joanna and Jacqueline? Or were their memories and behaviors simply a product of suggestion, planted unintentionally by grieving parents? Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist from the University of Virginia, who spent decades studying cases of reincarnation, eventually documented the Pollock twins in his research. He found their story compelling, perhaps even one of the strongest cases of reincarnation in modern history. But not everyone was convinced. Many argued that John's unshakable belief in reincarnation could have shaped the girls' perceptions. Children are impressionable, and memories can be influenced. Could this be nothing more than grief and suggestion manifesting in eerie ways? The Pollock twins case remains one of the most famous and mysterious stories in the study of life after death. It straddles the line between psychology and the paranormal, between coincidence and something much stranger. And decades later, the questions remain. Did Jillian and Jennifer truly carry the souls of Joanna and Jacqueline? Or is the mystery of the Pollock twins a haunting reflection of how far grief and belief can shape the world around us? When it comes to the Pollock twins, the most widely accepted explanation among skeptics and researchers is also the simplest: that their memories, behaviors, and uncanny similarities to Joanna and Jacqueline were not evidence of reincarnation at all, but rather the result of parental influence and suggestion. John Pollock's belief in reincarnation was unshakable. Even before his wife Florence gave birth to the twins, John was convinced they would be his daughters returned to him. To him, the pregnancy wasn't just a blessing. It was a promise fulfilled. That conviction may have shaped everything that came after. Children, especially at a young age, are extraordinarily impressionable. They pick up cues from their environment, from overheard conversations, from the unspoken hopes and fears of their parents. If John repeatedly spoke of Joanna and Jacqueline as if they might come back, it's possible Jillian and Jennifer internalized those ideas without ever realizing it. By the time they were old enough to form words and stories, the framework had already been laid for them. Psychologists call this cryptomnesia, the process by which a person recalls information they've heard or seen before, but mistakenly believes it to be original memory. In the case of the twins, it's possible they had overheard their parents reminiscing about Joanna and Jacqueline, describing their toys, their favorite places, or even the circumstances of their deaths. To a child's developing mind, those fragments could easily fuse into what feels like lived experience. The toys are a good example. Jennifer and Jillian are said to have recognized dolls that had belonged to their deceased sisters, calling them by name. To believers, this was evidence that they carried their sisters' memories. But skeptics argue the dolls weren't hidden away in some locked trunk. They were in the household. John and Florence could have mentioned them, intentionally or unintentionally, in front of the twins. Over time, the girls might have absorbed the associations until they seemed like personal memories. The same reasoning applies to the landmarks in Hexham. The town wasn't large, and stories of the accident were well known in the community. If the twins heard adults discussing the tragedy, or saw familiar buildings while walking through town, it's plausible they connected those impressions with what they sensed their parents wanted, a sign that their lost daughters were living on in them. Then there's the matter of the accident. Jillian and Jennifer reportedly acted fearful when crossing the street, clutching each other's hands and insisting a car would hit them. Again, it sounds chilling at first, as if the memory of death carried over. But critics point out that by the 1960s, cars were already a known danger to children. Parents often warned their kids about the risk of running into the road, especially if two children in the same family had already died that way. What looks like supernatural memory might simply have been a heightened sense of caution, instilled by parents terrified of history repeating itself. And we can't ignore the role of grief itself. John and Florence were devastated by the loss of Joanna and Jacqueline. In their longing, they may have unconsciously encouraged the twins to mirror their late sisters. When Jennifer displayed the birthmark similar to Jacqueline's, John took it as proof of reincarnation. When Jillian acted like a leader, he connected it to Joanna. Every small similarity became evidence. In psychology, this is known as confirmation bias, the tendency to notice and emphasize details that fit your belief while ignoring those that don't. Dr. Ian Stevenson, the psychiatrist who studied the case, documented many of the Pollock twins' claims, but skeptics argue that his methodology left room for error. Much of his evidence came from interviews with John and Florence, who may have exaggerated or unintentionally reshaped their memories over time. After all, people grieving a tragedy often cling to meaning wherever they can find it. And the more remarkable the story became, the more attention it attracted, reinforcing the Pollocks' conviction that something extraordinary was happening. In this light, the mystery of the Pollock twins looks less like a supernatural phenomenon and more like a psychological one. Suggestion, grief, and a father's unshakable belief may have combined to create an eerie, self-fulfilling narrative, one where two ordinary girls grew up under the shadow of sisters they never knew, convinced their lives had already been lived once before. But even if this explanation satisfies skeptics, it doesn't erase the unsettling questions. Could mere suggestion account for the level of detail the twins described? Or the marks on Jennifer's body, so similar to Jacqueline's? Could coincidence alone tie these pieces together so tightly? And if not suggestion, then what? If suggestion and parental influence can explain a part of the Pollock twins' story, they don't explain all of it. For many, the most compelling evidence lies in the details that seem to defy coincidence, details that made even hardened skeptics pause. This is where the case transforms from a story of grief and psychology into one of the strongest modern arguments for reincarnation. From the moment Jillian and Jennifer could walk and talk, their behavior seemed strangely tied to Joanna and Jacqueline, far more than their parents could have engineered. One of the earliest signs was the twins' differing personalities. Jillian, the older twin, behaved in ways strikingly similar to Joanna, the eldest sister who had died. She was confident, nurturing, almost motherly toward her sister. Jennifer, by contrast, was quieter and more dependent, mirroring the younger Jacqueline. These weren't fleeting impressions. Relatives, neighbors, and even teachers noticed the uncanny resemblance. Then came the birthmarks. Jennifer was born with 2 distinctive marks, one on her hip that closely matched a scar Jacqueline had carried, and another on her forehead, eerily similar to a wound Jacqueline sustained in the car accident. These marks weren't vague or imagined. They were documented, visible, and undeniable. For believers in reincarnation, they were physical proof that Jacqueline had returned. But perhaps the most unsettling evidence was the twins' knowledge of their sister's toys. When the Pollocks brought out dolls and playthings that had belonged to Joanna and Jacqueline, the twins immediately recognized them, not just as familiar objects, but as their own. They called them by name, assigned them to the correct sister, and even remembered details about how the toys had been used. Skeptics might dismiss this as suggestion, but the speed and accuracy with which the twins identified the toys shocked their parents. It didn't stop there. When the family visited Hexham, the town where Joanna and Jacqueline had lived and died, the twins pointed out landmarks with unsettling familiarity. They named places they had never been taken before. They recognized the school their sisters had attended. Florence once recounted how Jennifer and Jillian insisted they had played in a certain park, the same park where Joanna and Jacqueline had spent much of their childhood. The most haunting episode came on a street corner. As a car passed by, the twins clutched one another and cried out in fear, convinced they would be struck. To John, it was evidence they carried the traumatic memory of their sisters' deaths. To skeptics, it could be dismissed as ordinary childhood fear. But to believers, it was chilling confirmation of lives cut short and relived. Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist at the University of Virginia, who spent decades studying cases of children who claimed to recall past lives, investigated the Pollock twins extensively. He concluded that their memories were among the strongest evidence of reincarnation he had ever encountered. Stevenson's research spanned thousands of cases across cultures, and again he found the same elements: young children recalling names, places, and experiences that seemed impossible for them to know. In the Pollocks, he saw not just coincidence, but consistency with a larger pattern of unexplained phenomena. Even Florence, who had resisted John's beliefs in reincarnation, admitted she was shaken by what she witnessed. She recalled one chilling moment when Jennifer pointed to a scar on her forehead and declared it was from when she fell on a bucket. The story matched an accident Jacqueline had suffered, an accident Jennifer could never have known about. Believers argue that too many of these details align to be dismissed as suggestion or imagination. The birthmarks, the toys, the landmarks, the phobias, the personalities. Each piece might be explained away on its own, but together they form a puzzle that points to something extraordinary. The possibility that consciousness, memory, and even trauma can survive death and find a new vessel. If true, the Pollock twins' case isn't just a family's strange story. It's evidence that reincarnation is real, that life itself refuses to end with the body. For some, that possibility is comforting, proof that death is not final. For others, it's deeply unsettling. If lives can echo forward, what else might follow us? Trauma? Fear? The memory of a violent end? But there's another possibility, one even darker. What if the twins' memories weren't echoes of past lives at all? What if something else entirely was at work? Something not born of love or fate, but of manipulation, obsession, or forces we can't begin to understand. And that leads us into the third and most unsettling theory of all. If reincarnation is one explanation for the Pollock twins case, there's another theory that pushes us into even stranger territory, one that unsettles even those who believe in the possibility of past lives. What if the twins' memories and behaviors were not carried over souls, but something else entirely? What if the Pollock family became entangled with the supernatural? For some researchers and storytellers, the Pollock case doesn't feel like reincarnation at all. Instead, it has the hallmarks of possession or haunting. The details that tie Jillian and Jennifer to Joanna and Jacqueline are undeniable, but they also raise questions. If the sisters had truly been reborn, why did their memories seem to fade as they grew older? Why were their recollections strongest in early childhood, then weaken and disappear by the time they reached adolescence? That fading memory is a curious detail. Believers in reincarnation argue it's natural. Children often forget past life memories as their new life takes over. But to others, it suggests something more temporary, more invasive. Not the rebirth of a soul, but the presence of something hovering, something attaching itself to the twins in their formative years, before slowly slipping away. Paranormal researchers point to the birthmarks and scars as evidence of what they call spiritual residue. In this view, traumatic death leaves an imprint that can mark the living, not through genetics or reincarnation, but through energies we don't yet understand. In the Pollock's case, Jacqueline's head wound and hip scar appeared on Jennifer, not because she was Jacqueline reborn, but because something of Jacqueline lingered. There's also the question of the twins' sudden fears. Their terror of cars was specific, immediate, and overwhelming. They weren't simply cautious. They were panicked, as if reliving a trauma. In paranormal circles, such phobias are often interpreted as signs of haunting rather than memory. The spirit of a lost soul, unable to rest, may impress its trauma onto the living. And then there's the darker possibility that the Pollock twins were never linked to Joanna and Jacqueline at all, but to something else masquerading as them. Stories of spirits imitating the dead are common in folklore. The idea is chilling, that what appears to be a loved one returned could instead be something far more sinister, wearing a familiar face to gain trust. Critics dismiss this theory as superstition, but for some, the uncanny precision of the twins' memories suggests more than coincidence, more than psychology. If the world does contain forces we can't measure or explain, then perhaps the Pollock twins walk close to that edge, vessels for something neither they nor their parents could control. As the girls grew, their memories of Joanna and Jacqueline faded. By adolescence, they stopped speaking of the past lives altogether. To believers in reincarnation, that's expected. To skeptics, it proves nothing supernatural was ever happening. But to those who see shadows between the lines, it raises another question. Did the connection fade because the memories were gone? Or because whatever force was present had finally let go? The Pollock twins case remains unsolved, not because it lacks theories, but because none of them explain everything. Was it parental influence and suggestion? A story shaped by grief? Was it genuine reincarnation, offering one of the strongest pieces of evidence for life after death? Or was it something stranger still, an echo of trauma, a haunting, or even a deception by forces unknown? One family, 2 sisters lost, 2 twins born, and a mystery that has lingered for nearly 70 years, haunting not just the Pollocks, but anyone who dares to ask what really happened in that small English town. Thank you for joining us on this episode of 3 Theories. The mystery of the Pollock twins remains one of the strangest and most unsettling cases of the 20th century. Were Gillian and Jennifer simply shaped by grief and suggestion? Their memories and behaviors nothing more than echoes of their parents' loss? Were they true evidence of reincarnation, carrying the lives and deaths of their sisters within them? Or was something else at work? Something stranger, unexplainable, lingering only long enough to leave behind unanswered questions? What do you believe? To learn more about the Pollock twins, visit the resources provided in the show notes and on our website, 3theoriespodcast.com. There you can find detailed information and additional reading to help you form your own conclusions. We want to hear your thoughts and theories. Share them with us on social media and join the conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more curious minds like yours and continue to explore the world's greatest mysteries. Join us next time as we uncover another intriguing case and present 3 more theories for you to consider. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.